about the homework. We were looking at Connect earlier, and it shows that they're all past due, and there's no due dates on the syllabus.
Oh yeah, that's about because I haven't. Do the homeworks show in the?
Yeah.
They show homeworks 1 through 5, and they're all like a year past due. Like you can't.
Oh, I actually told that I just close them down, but I'll double check what's going on there. I mean, you shouldn't be seeing it because I haven't posted them yet.
Okay.
So those are the homeworks. Yeah, I will look at it after the class and update the homeworks and the dates and everything. So please don't start anything with your homeworks because, as I said, I checked this the other day and I was like thinking them not to show, but apparently I was wrong for some. Thanks for listening, guys. But today or latest tomorrow, you will see the homework one, and then afterwards, pretty quickly, I will start posting homework 2, homework 3, homework 5, and the case studies, so that you will have a pretty good idea of what's coming up and what are the due dates, etc. So that you can adjust yourself. Okay. So, any other questions about what? Okay. If not, yeah. Last time we talked about customers' perspective, first perspective, and strategic trade-off. We talked a little bit about the efficient frontier, and we stopped there. I'll pick it up from here, so from there for today, and we keep on talking about efficiencies and the role and importance of operations management. So the entire idea of this session is just basically to familiarize you, regardless of your background or focus or major in the school, that the operations management is actually at the heart of any business. So like, if the operations are not working, then the business is not working. So you can think of it like that. If a business is like a car, the tires can be marketing. So the steer can be the wheel, can be a strategy department that might be decide on where you're going to go. And finance might be the fuel. Without cash, you can run a business just like without fuel, you can run a car. And the operations is the engine, like where all the activities happening to propel forward. So that's why, regardless of your specialization and whatever you want to do in the future, this course is also a core course because of that. Okay, so let's quickly go further. Like we said, that utility functions actually consist of consumption, utility price, and convenience. It's just like a mental map of what we all have in our minds when we're making a decision. So basically, we all have different preferences about the quality of the food and whether we want it fast or slower or good quality or how much price we want, whether we want it across the street or we are willing to go to West Loop or etc. And this function is kind of a nice mental map of that. Like we have a consumption utility, which is the utility that is regardless of the price and inconvenience, how much we want that product, and it's something to do with the performance and fit, and then obviously the price, and then the inconvenience is the location and timing. It's like where are we going to get the product and how long will it take. From there, we talked about what are the objectives of a restaurant. Let's say that if you were about to open a restaurant, what kind of objectives you have in mind. Of course, profit would be the number one objective, but the way that goes through that objective, ultimately, how much profit you can make, depends on several factors. And these are essentially can be categorized as 4 dimensions of performance: efficiency, quality, variety, and time. No company, be it a restaurant or an NGO or any other company, can excel perfectly in all of the 4 dimensions. If you want to have a perfect quality, like go back to our restaurant example, if you want to be a Michelin star West Loop restaurant like Royster, then you cannot be as fast as McDonald's. It's just against the physics of how you do it. That's hard-coded constraint. Plus, you cannot hire a person who's cooking at McDonald's. You need to just basically hire a top chef who can just produce the exquisite materials into exquisite dishes, and also your input materials to the So you need to make decisions. So these are strategic decisions at a very high level, which means that when you are opening a restaurant or starting a business, you have a customer in mind, an average customer. And that average customer has an average utility function. Would you like to cater a Starbucks customer, or would you like to cater a McDonald's customer, or would you like to cater someone who wants to eat at the oyster at the, let's say, $100 per pack. So these are two different decisions, and that's called the market segmentation. So we can be that customer depending on the time and year or our age and manufacturer. So this morning I might be a McDonald's customer, but in the evening I'm a oyster customer. That's a different story. But these businesses try to, by making trade-offs between these performance measures, they try to map their offerings or products with the customer's demand. And that is called matching supply and demand. And that's the entire story of this class. How can we match supply with demand in the best way possible? There are also other factors coming in there. How much inventory I should stock so that when my customers are there, my products are ready for them. Obviously, when you go to, let's say, Macy's or Nordstrom, if you're for Abercrombie and Fitch, then if you're just looking for a certain color and certain type of t-shirt, if it's not there, you might just shift to the Hollister for some, let's say, for a similar type of shirt. So what you want is that not only have a strategic decision that like, what kind of product that I want, what kind of average customer that I want in mind, but also where should I serve that customer, and how much inventory I should stock, what should be my service time, should they wait long, or should I just, are they very impatient, etc., etc. These are all operational decisions. We go from there. What is differentiation, market segmentation, cost versus quality, right? Like Domino's, Giordano's, customization versus waiting time, Subway versus McDonald's. And every business has mainly 4 major dimensions of those trade-offs. The question is that though, how does these different dimensions how do they map in the, let's say, in the product and customer space? So can we do something about it? So can we visualize them in a better way? Because there are 4 dimensions, and if you want to visualize them, that will be tough to basically draw it. So a possible idea is that just to pick 2 dimensions among these 4 dimensions, and those 2 dimensions would be the ones that we think most important for the industry or for our competition. And then we can try to map them on a space of 2-dimensional space so that we can see where do we stand and where our competitors, where do they stand. And that's called these efficient frontier and Pareto dominance. Last time we stopped here. Is this better? Mm-hmm. But if you think that when I write it's not clear, just let me know. I won't put the slides. So what we're going to do is that we just draw 2 dimensions, right? In this case, let's say we have 2 restaurants. And let's say that our dimensions is service speed and cost efficiency. And last time we drew it, and last time I said that cost efficiency means that lower cost. So like speed means that higher speed means that lower waiting time. So depending on how you measure things, you should basically organize the axis like that, but be careful that we always want, in this kind of dimension comparison, something higher is the better. That's our assumption. So higher speed is the better, higher cost efficiency is the better, because it means that you are producing things at a less cost. So we say that the first one, the first company is like $4, it's the cost efficiency, and its speed is a little bit lower, something like 5 minutes. And the second company is lower cost efficiency, $5, but its speed is higher. So this is B, and this is A. Now, these two companies separate the market perfectly fine. So the company A, and last time I also asked, which one would you prefer? Depending on the day and depending on your time and money evaluation, you might go for the company A, because you can say that I'm paying a little bit. I think I go that's here. So that's 4, and yeah, that is the 10 minutes. That's the 5 minutes. So that's nice. So you can say that yes, I can go for company B because I'm paying $1 more, but I'm just halving the waiting time, and my time is valuable because of that reason. I would go for company B. There might be other people simply saying that, well, I'm okay to wait for double, but I'm just saving $1, and that $1 is more important. So these companies actually not dominating each other in the market. They're just simply separating the market nicely, depending on the customer profile. For example, company A might be Giordano's, like you have although Giordano's in this example is not a good because it's probably most expensive. So company might be someone serving a slower food but at a cheaper price, whereas the B is faster food at a higher price. Now, as we discussed last time, like which restaurant that you would prefer in this situation entirely depends on your personal utility function, and there's no dominant choice from the customer's perspective, depending on which customer is there. However, if we introduce the picture a company C, somewhere here, who's charging $6, and the waiting time is 15 minutes, and let's say this is company C. Would anybody go to company C? Rationally speaking. Unless, as we discussed last time, unless it's like a soup Nazi, there's something else going on there, like the soup is great, but even though there's a lot of inconvenience, you still prefer to go there. That can be possible, but if you are only focusing on these two dimensions, then basically in these two dimensions, everything else being equal between these three, among these three companies, company C is most likely will be out of the business, or it has to do something called to improvement towards an efficient frontier. And then this line here, or that's more like a curve, is called by the economists is the efficient frontier. Efficient frontier So what is efficient frontier? Efficient frontier is the collection of the firms which are not dominated by any other firm, which are not Pareto dominated by any other firm. And what is Pareto domination? If one firm is better than in both dimensions, this is very important, in both dimensions, if one firm is better than the other firm, that other firm is Pareto dominated by that firm. Like in this case, P is better than both cost efficiency and speed compared to C. Therefore, C is Pareto dominated by P. This is an important concept. Is it clear? So that basically we look at the both dimensions. Now, A is not Pareto dominated by B because B is better than A in speed, but B is not better than A in cost efficiency. B is worse than A in cost efficiency. Therefore, it's like a kind of a gridlock. I'm better than something, but I'm worse in another thing, and we just basically stand in an equilibrium. That's exactly if you take the microecon courses, microeconomics, or if you will take at some point, you will remember that like equilibrium conditions in the market, etc. So this is equilibrium. That's a gridlock that keeps the market nicely segmented and keeps everything on hold in the market. So there are Starbucks customers and there are Big Shoulders customers. So like basically prices are different, but like the coffee quality is different, and so you just segment the market. They can coexist. But if there's a third company who is serving worse coffee than Starbucks, which is difficult to find, and also more pricey, then that company would be basically out of the market. And so that's the Pareto dominance, and then in this case, C is Pareto dominated by A. Once again, a firm is Pareto dominated by another firm if the other firm is better in both dimensions. And to be Pareto dominated, you don't need to be Pareto dominated by like 10 companies, one is enough. So one strong competitor is enough. And a heuristic or a simple way to find it, if you will, you see these boxes, that is the trace of B. If any firm falls into this region, it means that by definition, B is better than any firm falling in this region of its own rectangle. So by just visually looking at the graph, you can immediately see that like you can just make an imaginary rectangle and then look at, all right, which firms are falling into that. So let's look at this example. So let's look at A. Is A worse than B in both dimensions? Is B worse than C in both dimensions? No, B is better than C, but worse than C in dimension 2. Like B is better than C in dimension 1, but worse than C. So as you can see, if I just draw imaginary rectangles here, you will see that these two firms Pareto dominate. How about D? Does D Pareto dominate A? No, right? Because D is better than dimension 2, but worse than dimension 1. So you got the concept. So in this case, A is Pareto dominated by B and C, and here A is Pareto dominated by B, and C it's not Pareto dominated by C. And if you can look at it, if you want to check these other ones, these the firms on the efficient frontier, which are marked as black, you will see that neither of them Pareto dominates another one. That's why they are on the efficient frontier. So which firm, in this case, in the efficient frontier, or which firms? E. Does everybody agree? Mm-hmm. Because E is at the top, and pretty much basically Pareto dominates all others, and therefore B sets the industry standard. If there are like only 5 companies in that industry, B sets the industry standard. So B is the apex predator. If this was, for example, an online space, like if you're looking at the online retailers, E is the, sorry, I said B, but it's E. E would be the Amazon, for example. So there is absolutely no competitor, a serious competitor that's just competing with Amazon. And you can say about this Amazon, and these are other big online retailers. So that's a different story. How about here? What is the efficient frontier? Which firms consist of efficient frontier?
Would it be D and F?
D and F. Let's look at the E. D is E Pareto dominated by anybody?
Oh wait, no.
So do we agree that D is pretty much Pareto dominates A and B, so it means that A and B is out of the game?
Yeah.
So we don't have to worry about that. So F Pareto dominates C. Do we agree that? Like so C is out of the game. So D, does anybody dominates D and F? Obviously, there's nothing. What about E? E is here. Is it Pareto dominated by anybody? No, right? Like, because who can Pareto dominate E? It can be D or F in this graph, like most reasonably. If I just draw imaginary rectangles, it's not falling there. And if I draw an imaginary rectangle here, like that, and it's also not inside there. Therefore, D, E, and F are the let's say, they are Pareto dominant terms. Therefore, they create the efficient frontier. Okay, any questions on this? So, this gap between the current firm who is not in the efficient frontier, and the efficient frontier is called inefficiency. So that, in other words, that firm, in the example company D, is making something wrong. Going back to our Starbucks and Big Shoulders example, if there's a third firm around here who's selling more pricey coffee with a poor quality or with a poorer service than Starbucks and Big Shoulders, is doing something wrong. And what might be those inefficiencies? There are actually several reasons, like any ideas that what might be going wrong with these companies who are not doing well in the, let's stick to the coffee example. It can be any company if you want. Okay, but if you see that, let's say that you map 2 dimensions, and let's say that service speed and cost efficiency, dimension 2 cost efficiency, dimension 1 service speed, what might be that these companies are not on the efficient frontier doing wrong? What might be the, yes?
Maybe they want to staff to get like quicker service.
So they might be understaffed, right?
It might be more expensive.
Their pricing is wrong.
We might not understand like who their target audience is.
Their mapping, utility function mapping is wrong. So they didn't understand. And does that have something to do with the pricing, right? Just basically, they say that, all right, maybe we are a Big Shoulders customer, but they are selling a poor, or they open the, they're not selling to the Big Shoulders customer. They're not providing that quality. Yeah.
Maybe they don't have the best vendor relationships.
Maybe they don't have the best vendor relationships. Supply problems. Like, can you give me an example of what might go wrong if you're a coffee house who has supply problems? What might be your problem?
Maybe you don't buy, if you're just like a single store, it might be hard to buy enough bulk to get a good price, like per unit of coffee.
Perfect. Like, if you are just basically a single store, if you are not exploiting economies of scale, you cannot negotiate quantity discounts with your vendors, and then your cost might be actually higher than necessary, right?
And then also, if you're just like a or a one location coffee shop, you might not be able to buy in the quantity to get certain coffees from certain areas. So the coffee you can buy will be less quality.
Exactly. You may not have a good quality sources, access to the markets where you can resource. For example, let's say that I like Indonesian coffee very much, so like they're really awesome like coffee, and then it's hard to find really. I tried to buy some of special Indonesian coffee in America, and it's really hard because so far away, and exactly that it's just simply the cost doesn't justify what you buy. You can buy Sumatra, but not all regions. Yes.
I was gonna say the physical retail location, where it is kind of going off of the customer base, that's kind of getting.
Exactly. So like if this is a perfect place for coffee, lots of businesses in the university, in the downtown, right there, like the almost demand is guaranteed from 6 a.m. to all the way to 9 p.m. But if you're all the way in a suburban area, then you don't have that kind of. So perfect. These are great examples. So these companies, whatever the reason, they are doing something wrong or something gone wrong in their decisions and operations, and they need to fix it. Here's a practical example from airline industry. This is the efficient frontier of the airline industry in 2000. Of course, not all companies there, but like major well-known companies are there. As you can see, roughly, this is the efficient frontier. US Air, Alaska, American Continental, Delta, Southwest, and then United Northwest and American West were below that frontier. And what are our dimensions? Our dimensions are that miles obtained per dollar of expense. Basically, how many miles do you fly for $1 you spend? And higher the miles, you are more cost efficient. So this is cost efficiency. And then revenue earned per $1 earned per mile you fly, which means that this is about your profit. Like higher the revenue, better obviously, and that also revenue means that your prices is also can be higher. So because it's not the direct profit, it's just the price. So what we see here is that United Northwest and American West was Pareto dominated in 2000, and when we come to 2012, and we see several things. Now we see that the entire industry is more like aligned with each other, and they kind of nicely segment the market. For example, United and Continental move towards that direction. You see, United was here, and then it made a strategic choice to go all the way down and also merge with Continental. That also happens if you are not doing very well. Typically, a bigger company comes and buy you and basically restructure you and make you more lean or whatever, and just like basically try to make that company more profitable. So here in this case, United and Continental merged, and as you can see, they move towards more efficiency. Because they say that we would be more efficient, we will going to earn more miles per the dollar we spend, but then we're going to sacrifice the revenue, which means that they reduce their prices per mile. So like they said we are going to be more cost efficient. What might be what kind of practical changes you might have seen if a company like United make this kind of shift? If they all of a sudden decide that I will be cost efficient, but you will fly for cheaper, what would it affect you as a consumer? What part of utility functions that will be affected in your mind? Amenities, like, right, they might start serving or even serving nothing, which they do. And so, what else?
They reduce legroom, add more seats.
Perfect. They might reduce legroom, your comfort level goes down the drain along with those Coke and tomato juice. And what else?
How much leverage you can have.
How much luggage? How much luggage you have? Exactly. In fact, nowadays you can't even fly again, my age will be obvious now, but in the past you could, one luggage was free for, like, you can one check-in luggage was free pretty much in wherever you fly. Nowadays, even a carry-on luggage is not allowed in most of the time. So like there's this differentiation.
They can impose special fees, like if you bring your dog or if you bring your cat.
Exactly, all kinds of additional fees, precisely. And what about time? How does it affect our time? If an airline gets more cost efficient, would it affect our time as a passenger?
Yeah, like they might have more flights to make up for like the less revenue per mile. So like you might be flying at strange times, or like if like one flight's delayed, it's more likely to have residual effects going forward. And, like,
Exactly, they might cut staff, and then also they might increase the number of flights, which might create a congestion in the system. There might be occasional delays, and you might wait. And also, did you hear of United does a lot? And actually, my brother was about to fly from Boston to Germany only 2 weeks ago, and he just went to the airport just to check in because he knows that United overbooks a lot. and he was in a tight schedule, so they do a lot of overbooking, which means that they sell some certain parts of tickets double. They do it intentionally, and then they try to, because there's some probability of no show, and this is called revenue management. It's basically pricing and revenue management, so that they sell, let's say, 10% of the tickets double for each airplane, hoping that 10% of the customers will not show up. And of course, you need to estimate it very well, because if all of a sudden 10% shows up, you need to accommodate the other 10% in the hotel, or you give them incentives, etc. But so it's a tricky business. There's an optimization problem, which tons of people working on that. But let's say that every now and then, maybe 9% doesn't show up, but that 1% showed up, and you have to deal with it. And occasionally, United Flights does that, so like you will be overbooked. So these are all relevant things, and that's a strategic decision. But then they say that we might charging lows. That's also what the low-cost airlines like Southwest, etc., does. Like they could even be more stricter and lower the price. So when they do that, they move in this direction of the efficient frontier. On the other hand, when we look at the Delta, perhaps it was a strategic decision that they saw that United and Continental merge, and they are basically cutting the cost. What they did is that they move in the opposite direction to have a better market segmentation. They simply say that, all right, you can have your tomato juice and Coke, and we will still not charge you that much for your doggy, but basically we're gonna charge you more for the price, and we will go over less and we make less overbooking, etc. So that's a market segmentation at work in practice. Okay, so how come these going back to these Pareto dominated firms, like what are the inefficiencies, as in the example of coffee roasters and the coffee shops? So essentially, there are two types of costs in any company. These are the cost of inputs. This is where what you use your resources to transform these inputs to outputs, coffee beans to coffee, and then in the process you generate money. A fast food restaurant has like meat, salad, and buns, and soda as their input, and a computer manufacturer like display chips. The resources are the equipment and the staff and building that help to transform input to output. In this case, a fast food restaurant, a cooking equipment, for example, will be a resource. Staff, employee, kitchen employee will be a resource. So we already talked about it, like what are the common reasons for restaurants to be off the efficient frontier, and essentially what all these things that we talked before, like what might go wrong with these two different coffee roasters, be it supply problems or staffing problems or location problems. All these things can be roughly categorized into three major categories. First, there might have been a lot of waste in a company when they are transforming input to output. They might generate a lot of waste. Second, that they are facing variability. Every company is facing a variability. The basic one is that the customer time structures, they simply customers come in different points in time. There's a rush hour. In the morning, the Starbucks is busy, there's a queue. In the afternoon, or at late night, after 6 o'clock, there's hardly anybody. But they can't simply so easily fire and hire stuff, and there should be some people there. The machines should be working, the electricity should be on, the rent is there, so they are basically inflexible in certain ways to adjust to these demand changes. And that comes there is the third system inhibitor, that's why. So you are subject to variability, and if you are inflexible in face of this variability, then you automatically create an inhibitor for yourself. So basically, waste, variability, and inflexibility are the two system inhibitors making company or keeping companies to be successful or to be competitive or to be in the efficient frontier. So, any example of waste in the coffee shop discussion, like what might be a company's waste there? Let's say that you have a third coffee shop here, open, and you're not doing well. What might go wrong? What kind of waste do you have?
Like if the staff roasts their own beans and the staff's not trained properly, they could be like roasting the beans incorrectly.
Exactly. If the staff is not trained properly, or if you just have a generic staff rather than giving them a certain type of training, then these wastes can all occur. What else? Exactly. If they brew too much coffee and if it doesn't sell, then that's a total waste, right? Just same as with McDonald's. If they just do too many burgers and it just doesn't sell, it's in the garbage bin. As a matter of fact, even Starbucks, companies like Starbucks are very vigilant about reducing the waste. Like if you go try to order decaf at Starbucks over there, you will not get a decaf right away. You need to wait like 4 or 5 minutes because they don't stock decaf coffee. Because the demand is low, and if they just brew decaf coffee, only every now and then a peculiar person like me comes and asks for a decaf, and this just doesn't tip off. The rest is waste. So what they do is that every time I go and ask for that, they say, all right, first, why do you ever decaf coffee? And second, you have to wait for that. And then I have to wait. So that's a form of reduction in the waste. What is variability? One variability I already give, like the demand, obvious. That's the most obvious variability. There are peak times and there are low times. And later on we will learn that's called stuffing, like leveling the stuff. Basically, how can we just find these kind of the optimal level of stuffing so that we can keep up with these variabilities in the system. So, any example of a variability problem?
Like customers' tastes change over time. So
Very
like,
good.
I know a restaurant that they used to sell lamb chops. Like 40 years ago, that was their most popular dish, but then they
But
just
not-
took it off because
It's a great example, like over time there are fluctuations of customer taste and you need to adjust to that.
There are also like shortages in like food, so like a certain type of meat won't be very
Supply problems,
Yeah.
right? Like exactly, if there's a certain type of, like, let's say organic meat, for whatever reason, like Chipotle had some problems with the supply of sustainable meat sources a couple of years ago because farmers faced some issues and there were simply supply problems. Yes?
certain things that are seasonal, like skis. So there's not really demand for skis or snowboards during summertime.
So yes, so there'll be certain specialty products, right? And yeah,
I was gonna say the same thing, like holidays or seasons in general, like cold or hot time.
exactly. So there's like seasonality in those right? Exactly.
Like in the retail industry, they're like so much more busier during the holidays and like back to school than they are usually like over the summer and stuff like that.
Yes. So that's a big problem, right? Especially for retailers, like all kinds of demand is simply fluctuates greatly, and then you need to make your seasonal adjusted forecasts for that.
Competitor opens up in the area.
Yes, a great example as well. Like competitor opens up all of a sudden, and if you don't have the plan to compete with that enough, then these are all variables. So, and then you need to be a natural argument or corollary of this problem of variability is that you need to be flexible. But a company can be flexible only so much, and it seeks to be it basically looks for ways. It should look for ways to be flexible to keep up with constantly changing business environment. Supply sources, demand side sources, seasonalities, competition coming up, and then you need to be agile for it. But at the same time, while you're doing that, you need to be quite you need to be quite cost efficient. So it's a very difficult business to succeed. And here are some examples for trade system inhibitors. Like we already talked about the fast food restaurant, leftover food, the form of waste, swings in customer demand, the form of variability, and rigid stuffing levels is the form of inflexibility. When we are talking about rental cars, cars sitting in the park lot would be the form of waste because let's say that you're paying again the lot rent, the stuffing rent, the maintenance fee for the cars, but if you're not renting those cars are day-to-day generating costs for you but not revenue, and therefore it's a waste. Like variability might be that again demand levels might change all of a sudden in a rainy day or for some whatever, if there's a big event going on in town, all of a sudden your demand might pick up, but then you don't have enough cars, and you can't just simply go and buy cars in one day, you just have to keep up with that. So, and then so that's also this not being able to change the capacity very quickly is the form of a good example is the fashion retailer, and I'm going to show you a video afterwards about Zara. The fashion inventory, like in the fashion business, the waste is something like that. So basically they commit for the line of what they are going to produce and sell in winter season or in fall season already about 6 months ago, and why is that? Because these productions are made in faraway places like Far East Asia, China, Vietnam, Taiwan, and the reason is that the cost is cheaper there. So fashion companies, let's say, they start designing the summer 2020 from now, and they sniff the market already starting from the 2020 as of now, and just think about that, or let's say spring, maybe spring is a better example, spring 2020. And then they decide on what colors would be, let's say, more popular. What kind of jackets, what kind of shirts, trousers, etc. will be popular. And they just update their forecast, and then at some point, let's say 3 months before the season starts, they give a big order to, let's say, a factory in China or Taiwan, and they say that, okay, this is my design, bring it back, like produce and bring it back, and I'll put it in my retail store. That's how a fashion works. And then at the end of the season, they discount it. Like they say that, all right, we thought that the purple sweater will be very popular this year, but it turns out to be it's not that popular. So we are going to go discount that. Like those are the discounts that you see in Macy's or Nordstrom or Abercrombie at the end of the season. They try to get rid of the excess inventory with 20%, 30% discount. If it's still not working, they send it to third parties like TJ Maxx or Marshalls, and then that's all that inventory that you see in Marshalls is just basically why it's so steeply discounted is that those are the items that are not so hot in the market, and they were just basically accumulated over time. But why are they doing it? They save inventory costs because by keeping those items, and plus that even though they discount 30-40%, they're still making good money because the labor cost is very cheap in China or Taiwan. This is a classic fashion model. Zara had a different idea. He said that I don't like this. I don't want to discount it like all the way to 30-40% at the end of the season and committing it 3 months before for a season that I know. What they did is that they decide to only commit to the 50% of the line, and then they produce 50% of the line, and they didn't go to China. They said that I'm going to produce in Europe and locally, like across Spain and Poland, Bulgaria, and Romania. They said that it will be more expensive, but ultimately, during the season, I will simply look at which parts are selling, which pieces are selling. Then I can change my design, and I can just basically better match supply and demand. So that's their way of making it come over in flexibility. And here's a video about it. It's a kind of a 10 minutes video, but it actually shows nicely what kind of innovations they have, and that's
One of the first things that we need in this vertical integration of the production is to have the right information. How do we get the right information? We can have all the information daily from the stores, on sales the day before, but that's easy, just to know what stores are selling, what colors are selling, and all this. But the difficult thing is to know what we don't have, and we should. And in order to know this, communication is very important. Personal communication with the store manager. And for instance, you're now seeing a meeting that you're having right here, all the product people along with the commercial people, in order to establish also how many styles we're going to do for the collection that we're doing right now. And they're just dealing with the information that they're getting from the store managers, and they are now putting all together in order to take decisions about the product and how to manage the product. After all this information they get from the stores, then we have different options about the product. The creation is not only a matter of the designers, graphic designers, it's a matter of all this information and all the decisions that they all together take following all this information that they are gathering in the stores. Once we get all this information, we have several options. First of all, we can decide that an article is not selling well, so we can take it out of the collection. No problem at all, because we don't have stock. As we produce, we sell, we just send to the store, so it's not a problem of stock. Also, we can decide just to keep in style or make another one which is slightly different, because people in the stores, they ask for this. And they say, for instance, don't you have this in this color? Don't you have stripes instead of square? And then another third option that we have is to introduce a new item in the collection. And that's very important, because actually that's the main objective of Zara. All the integration, all the organization, all the work that we do and how we do it is in order to get this fast response to the market when they need it and how they need it. Since this is like a chain with no end and no beginning, it's like everything is just goes around. So this will be the beginning, but at the same time it's the continuity, because this happens during the whole season. From everything that you can find in the store, 80 to 90%, depending on the collections of course, but 80 to 90% is more or less is produced in Europe. From that 80 to 90%, we have like a 65%, which is manufactured here in Spain, and from that 50% is made right here in Arteco, here in our facilities. Our fabrics arrive here from several parts in the world, mainly from Italy, France, and even Spain. Once we have the fabrics, we have the first step, which is the marking, which will help us to take the most profit, to minimize the waste of the cloth as we are going to cut. As we cut more than 35 million meters of cloth in 1 year, this is a very important step to take. It's like putting a puzzle, but it's a puzzle where the pieces don't match, because actually the patterns are different, they have different shapes. So the persons in charge of doing the marking, they must make this puzzle fit, although they're not supposed to match. This is one of the most difficult things, because it becomes even more difficult as they have to match stripes, or they have to respect the direction of the cloth. This information goes straight to the cutting table. The matches will be from 40 up to 100, 120 layers of cloth. We pick up the blocks of fabric which are sent to the workshops. In the workshops, they put together all the pieces of the garments. These workshops are located all over the region in Galicia, even the northern part of Portugal. The workshops are owned by independent subcontractors. In total, we have more than 11,000 people working in the workshops. The workshop is organized as an array of small assembly lines. Garments are sent back here to the very same manufacturing plant that has done the cut. Once we get them back here, we start with the quality control, which also is the beginning of the ironing process. Quality control involves several steps. We check every single part, one by one. Once we finish the quality control, then the garments are sent to the bagging system machine. They are bagged and transferred to the distribution center on an automated system. This system links every manufacturing plant with the logistics center by a total of 211 kilometers away. The distribution center has an area of 400,000 square meters, which are divided in two areas. One of it will be dedicated to the hanging clothes, and then another one to the folding clothes. These two floors for the hanging clothes, the first one is where we receive all the garments which are arriving directly from the manufacturing center. And the second floor, where we can see the red papers, this is the floor where we distribute the garments to the stores. Actually, in those red papers, we have the names of each store in the world. Then, in the other area for the folding garments, the way we distribute is using what we call the carousel, a distribution machine which has been done specifically for us. A system of distribution based on the mail. As the garments arrive to the computers, they pass through the infrared, through the barcode. So they identify what kind of garment we're going to distribute at that moment. The folding clothes are carried around the carousel on trays, which automatically distribute into boxes that are going to the stores that ordered them. The way the stores make the orders is through the PDA. The day that they have to make the order, they just connect the PDA, and the office here in the logistics center will send them all the availability that we have in the logistics center, everything that we have manufactured from the last order. By the end of the day, they just gather all the orders from the 3 departments inside of the store in one of the PDAs, and be connected again. So the order will arrive to the office here in the logistics center as a unique order from that store. The trucks are owned by independent subcontractors. The stores order twice per week, although we send the merchandise 4 times per week from the distribution center here in La Coruña. 2 days we'll distribute to a specific geographical area, and then another 2 days will be for another geographical area.
Okay, so going back to our discussion, as you can see, so what Zara did is pretty much increase the flexibility, at the same time increasing the cost. One of the things that you might have noticed in the video is that she said that we cut the clothes, but we subcontract them to the independent subcontractors in the European region most of the time. They're 80% of the production is taken in Europe, like about half of it is in Spain. And basically that gives them the flexibility to decrease and increase the labor force pretty nicely because it's just a subcontractor. They don't own their own staff workers, which is quite a big commitment for capacity, labor capacity. Another thing that you might have noticed that they also say that shipments are carried by independent contractors as well. Like they don't own their trucks. So basically they just, it's a mailing system. So they basically use independent subcontractors again for logistics and etc. So these give them everything in Zara's model is designed around flexibility to just basically surf through the waves of that like fashion industry, demand chains and etc. So there are already a couple of things that we noticed in the video that how operations management can help us. So basically, all of this is just, as you can see, we combine design people with the logistics and product managers or store managers to discuss these different options and how could they react to the market. And that's where actually the role and importance of operations management comes into. So operations management help us or provide us the tools to make these trade-offs between these 4 dimensions of performance. Also, it helps us to reduce inefficiencies by, again, through certain tools. And it also helps us to make innovation decisions. Like in the example of, again, in Zara example, she says that this carousel thing or the is designed for that. So we need to think about that, whether it's worth of investing in such an expensive project or does it really tip off for their balance sheet with the profits to justify that kind of investment or not. That again, it's a question of operations management. What kind of efficiencies do I gain at innovating or investing in a new technology, and what do I do? Okay, so the first one, the main trade-off among dimensions of performance is that let's assume that we are on the efficient frontier as a company, and we start thinking about like whether we should go downwards in dimension 1 by sacrificing some of the speed, for example, but being cost efficient, or upwards. So like in the example of Delta and United, they decided on that whether they should go towards the cost efficiency or a little bit of higher price but a fast service. A call center simply just says that, shall I be more cost efficient by increasing my customers' waiting times, reducing the staff and increasing the AT&T, for example, makes this kind of decision. When you call them, should you wait longer, or are you going to be a very unhappy customer? At some point you say, okay, damn, this company's service is very bad, I will just basically shift to RCN. That also happens a lot. Or you would just basically, like RCM, put more stuff and to be more differentiated in the service and just basically reduce the waiting time of the customer, being very responsive whenever they need the service, but at the same time charge the premium for that. So this is the decision that we, companies have to make every day, and operations management provides mathematical tools for that. What are those tools? As we will see some of them: process analysis, waiting time analysis, and supply chain management, like transportation, inventory management. And these are like, why they are mathematical? Because this comes from essentially from optimization and operations research. It's another applied mathematical discipline. And basically in OM we simply borrow that tools and learn. Okay, reduce inefficiencies. Again, this is a problem of question for operations management. Because as we discussed there in the coffee example, there might be some stuffing problems, like educational problems, like how many stuff that we might have some supply problems, like we cannot get the right supplies, and then that might create us some waste. We need to forecast the demand so that we don't brew a lot of coffee. And OM provides us tools to identify and eliminate these inefficiencies, and mainly, there are many tools, but mainly it's lean operations. Like basically, lean means that you make the company as lean as possible by reducing the inventories, by reducing all kinds of waste, so that the company is agile and there is ultimately there is zero waste. So that's the philosophy of lean. We will discuss it when we come to that. Innovate and improve operations. Okay, that carousel looks very fancy for Zara, but it's probably a couple of $1 million investment. It's a big money for any company. So the question is that, would it really make it work? Does it really pay off? How operations management can help us? Whenever we have that kind of big complex problem, we can again use mathematics and simulate the system. So we can basically build up that carousel in a mathematical model, a complex distribution model, and simulate the system against all possible scenarios, and then decide on whether it makes, on average, whether it makes sense to invest in it or not. For example, this is scientific method. Like if you go to NASA, they also simulate all the time before they launch a rocket to the space. So basically, this because the rocket science is a very complex thing, as you might think. A lot of things can go wrong during the launch, and then when you're up there, and then basically going, especially landing in the moon, and then lifting off in the moon is the most difficult part. And recently, I watched a documentary by someone who was working for NASA for that first moon landing project. There were two different teams working in two different cities. One was about going to the moon, and the other one is about coming back from the moon. And these two different teams were like working 500 PhD people inside them, and just basically these two different projects were going on parallel, and they were doing, and the guy was who was just giving the interview. He was a Turkish guy working for the takeoff problem, and he was giving the interview saying that basically we simulated and we coded pretty much a lot of things. Like our manager said that, all right, now simulate this and this and this and that, like that kind of effects in the mathematics. And it's not even clear if they use all of these. So typically for a complex project like that, you need to be sure that even the absolutely unimaginable possibilities and simulate and hedge against them, and what can you do about that. So, and the same scientific mindset happens in the businesses as well. So whenever you are, let's say, making an investment, you're a stockbroker working for finance, these stock movements, to predict the future, you kind of simulate them. So you have the information from the history, you fit a model to there, and you kind of generate numbers. And the same principle applies for any kind of supply chain problem. Operations management gives us these tools, simulation tools, that help us to simulate a strategic decision so that we have a much better forecast about what would it look like in reality if we would build that in reality. So, all right. So, what type of problems does OEM address? We already talked about it, but in general, process analysis and improvement, quality, product quality, basically Six Sigma, and Lean is about like ensuring that you have the right quality of the product, anticipating customer demand. This is forecasting the demand, and also not only forecasting, how can we design a supply chain that is flexible enough, just like Zara's, that even there are shifts in the demand, we can just flow through that relatively easily, and also respond to the customer demand. So what products and services best meet the needs of our customers. So these are the major problems that we are going to talk about. Mostly we will focus on the process analysis, and the lean operations, as well as the supply chain management. As I said, there are tons of topics that we can discuss, but we should be strategic and outright to do that. So here's the supply chain, for example. It's an OEM. It's the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 supplier. But that chain goes all the way to the raw materials, basically rare earths materials or all kinds of materials, right? So there are like, it's going further up and up. And that is why it's extremely difficult to assess some sort of a carbon footprint on a product. Like, why would you like to assess if your product is green or not? Like, there's an application of that. Why do you think that it's important for me to know that if this clicker is sustainably produced or not? Why would I care for that?
I mean, if your like whole business model is selling sustainable products, then you don't want to actually buy something that was shipped around the world several times because it's not sustainable versus just making it in a local manufacturing setting.
Exactly. If your marketing or if your strategy, like if you're trying to map those customers who have a green utility function, who care about sustainable products, etc., then you need to know that for that reason, like so that you can, for example, if you go buy something from Whole Foods, you see that if that tuna is whole fish or not, or sustainably hunted, etc. But there's also another reason why even a non-sustainable or non-green organic products or companies producing that kind of products should matter. Yeah.
I mean, like I was also thinking like certain customers, because I did an internship at a display manufacturing company, and certain customers want like made in America things versus like imported from other parts of the world. So like you have to worry about where it's actually produced in that setting.
Exactly. There's a great example. Like not only if it's green or what is the like environmental footprint of it, it might be that certain customers care about that if it's made in America or not. Now you can. The problem with the green and this made in America or what is it? Typically that stops here. So like after the third tier supplier, it's hard to trace it back because you don't know if the copper inside this will be just mined in America or it's coming from China or somewhere else in the world. So this same applies for the green products as well. If it is just sustainably sourced or not, then the chain becomes less and less visible if you go upwards in the chain. And the solution for that probably will be in the future a blockchain technology where there's this cryptocurrencies technology used for tracing the entire supply chain. So that would be a possible solution to that, because in the blockchain technology, there will be a kind of one ledger that everybody writes whenever they produce something, just like in the cryptocurrencies, and that might bring a drastic visibility, at least that's the premise behind it, to the blockchain, to the supply chain. Okay, so this is the point supply chain, and then these are the last two slides now that we will close it for today. So, and it can be also service operations. This is, for example, the process map of a hotel, like when the customer, what happens when the customer arrives, and what is the check-in process, what is the checkout, and where is the e-delivery back. So this is kind of a mapping of the process in the service operations, and as well as we can use the same idea, same mapping for the generation of the ideas as well. Okay, so in short, operations management especially represents like about 60 to 80% of the cost in a company, and therefore it affects pretty much at the center, any other functionality, and it's very central for operations, for the success of the company. So from there on, next week we will start on the introduction to process analysis. Please have a look at the slides, and I will post the homework one already today or tomorrow. Yes.